In this episode of Sushasan, we have with us the multi-talented, hugely inspirational lady IAS officer who recently retired as Secretary to the Government of India. She's made a seminal contribution in the field of school education while being in the services. She's worked very closely with Prime Minister Modi, first in the Gujarat government and then in the Government of India. She's a spiritual seeker and yoga and meditation form a big part of her life. She's also an author, a writer. She's written multiple columns, written 3 books, fiction, non-fiction, humor, and planning to write 2 more. She's an avid traveler and has traveled across the country and the globe. She talks about it all in this episode of Sushasan. Don't miss out this freewheeling conversation with Mrs. Anita Karwal. In the end, you will be left with a feeling of being inspired. Very warm welcome, Mrs. Anita Karwal, to Sushasan. Really happy to have you here and really looking forward to this conversation. And I'll tell you why. So you were for the longest time in the Ministry of Education, Government of India, Joint Secretary, Additional Secretary, then you were CBSE Chairperson, then you were Secretary School Education and you retired as that. And we do a lot of work in education, but most of our work is in the states. So Haryana, Andhra, Uttar Pradesh, Himachal. So really never got to know you even while you were in education for such a long time. We were in some meetings together, our team members were in some meetings with you, but really never got to know you. But I'm so glad that I reached out to you a couple of months back and then we had that conversation. We shared about your life journey from, you were a Bihari essentially, but Bengal, Bihar, then Delhi, then getting married to an IPS officer from Punjab, then settling in Gujarat for a long time and then Delhi. And all of this while not just really contributing meaningfully through the work that you're doing, but all the other aspects of your life, right? Spirituality, you are a seeker, you're kind of making progress on that part. You are a traveler, you are a writer, a mother of 2. I think the one word that I was left with was really inspired, right? I really felt inspired when I last spoke to you. A multifaceted, what a journey that you've had so far. I thought ki aapko Sushasan pe bulana hai and definitely really looking forward to this. So warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. Thank you for the welcome and you are really generous.
No, I think I really felt inspired. I genuinely felt inspired. Let me start off with the thing that you are which being your biggest and the most seminal contribution, which is the National Education Policy. Now, NEP came out in 2020 and after more than around 35 years, India had a National Education Policy. I think one of the most important policy documents that have come out of the Government of India in a long time, in my view, something that can shape the future of the country, something that will shape the future generations of the country. And there was so much consultation that had happened in the run-up to this document. So many people were consulted for years. That happened, and I think deservedly so because such a critical document. And there are of course all the formal structures that kind of put together the document. There was a committee, all the inputs came, etc. But there was one person inside the government at the back end who was really drafting this in some sense, right? Or really crafting this, taking some important decisions, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and that person was you. That's at least from what I understand, that person was you who really played a critical role in shaping that final policy document. What I would love to hear from you is how do you look at NEP in the sense what's the importance of it and what's the breadth of it? What all does NEP cover in its gamut and how do you see the criticality or the importance of NEP?
Firstly, Gaurav, in all humility, I must clarify that I was looking after the school education part of the drafting. The higher education part, huge amount of contribution has come from Mr. Subramanian from the ministry. Mm-hmm. So I would like to acknowledge that. And also while I was helping the drafting, I had a team to help me and of course the committee was there, etc. So as you rightly said, NEP has come after 34 years. Okay, we haven't had a policy in between. And I think it plays a very important role in today's world because of the kind of disruptions that are happening, the kind of uncertainty which is there in this world. We've had 2 earlier policies, as you're aware. So one was in the 60s, one was in the 80s. And perhaps those were also turning points. And this is a huge turning point where there is an information technology revolution going on. There is a government, which means business, at the central level and also in many states. And also we are actually, there has been a change in the century. From the 20th century, we've come to the 21st century. And the requirements have changed for future jobs, for future readiness. So I think it has come out at a very, very apt time. And it is a very apt policy which actually takes care of a huge amount of requirements of future readiness for our young citizens.
Yeah, and what's the gamut of the NEP and what all does it cover, if you would kind of just articulate?
So in the school education side, which I would prefer to speak upon, it covers everything from which is required for education for a 0-year-old to an 18-year-old, 18, 19-year-old. By 0, we mean that a child who is just born, about to be born, just born, what are the requirements that the parents need to take care of. So if you look at the NEP, it takes care of access, it takes care of infrastructure, takes care of curriculum, it takes care of pedagogy, the classroom transactions, the assessments, what the board of examinations have to do, how the institutions have to deliver, how the manpower is to be trained and how their capacity is to be built. It takes care of how governance is to take place, how technology will seep into education and educational governance. So it takes care of a huge gamut of things.
Yeah.
So if you compare this with the previous policies, you will find that the scope has really enlarged. So, for example, the previous policies have been shorter policies, and they have not really discussed the scope of education or really gone into the details of the whys, the hows, the whats, which happens in NEP 2020. And that's why it makes it a very relatable policy, policy which everybody understands it, and there is huge acceptance of the policy in the country.
That's one thing that I'm really fascinated by, because when you bring such a large policy and covering so many dimensions of education, bound to be some kind of critique, but I've hardly seen any critique of the policy. All the inputs were kind of taken in advance. It's a very comprehensive policy. Almost everyone that I've come across says it's a very, very good document, good policy. People who've been in education for the longest time, even people who kind of are in adjacent and looking at it from outside, hardly any critique, and which is itself a huge
Gaurav, the amount of consultation it has gone through is probably a world record. Right from the Gram Panchayats to the municipalities and towns and onwards to experts, professionals, homemakers, educationists, teachers, principals, students. Crores of people have been consulted. And the best thing is, once the draft came out, we did not stop at consultation. Even the draft was consulted. In fact, I still recall that we had about a year in which the draft had to be finalized. And we put out this consultation online system. We received something like 1.6 lakh comments and feedbacks in detail. And I had, and towards the end, I had about 1.5 months to go through each and to decide what is to be kept, what is not to be kept, how it is to be treated. And we had a team in NCRT which was working on this. We had a team in the ministry. We had a team in the CBSE working on it. We have spent days and nights on it, and some fantastic comments came. I'll give you an example. So in the NEP, there is a clause that preschool education will extend to Kendriya Vidyalaya. So Kendriya Vidyalayas right now are central government schools, and we have grades 1 to 12. We do not have Balvatika or preschool. Now this came as a suggestion in amongst these 1.6 lakh. And we felt, yes, that is a right suggestion, and we immediately put it in the policy. So you can imagine so much consultation. Obviously, I mean, we hoped that acceptance would be, universal, and we are so happy that it was.
And how long back did the consultation start, and were there some kind of innovative ways in which it was done? Because it's a mammoth exercise, right? You're saying from Gram Panchayat right up to the national level experts. So what were some ways that were adopted, and how long back did it start?
So it was a blended approach. It was both physical as well as online. and consultation was done through state governments, with districts, through districts, with SCRTs, NCRTs, through them. So the consultation, the process that was adopted was not singular. It was very varied across. And what we found is that it was taken very seriously. Everybody was very concerned about education, and it was taken very seriously. So very, very serious kind of arguments and discussions have taken place and suggestions have come through.
Great. And from where you stand, if you were to pick from your side 3 to 5 most critical cornerstones of NEP, and let's talk about school education, what would those be? Because everyone you ask will have different set of things which are important. Of course, everything is important, but from where you stand, what's the seminal kind of path-breaking things that are there in the NEP? 3 to 5 of them.
For me, the most important and the basis of the entire policy is the foundational literacy and numeracy mission mode recommendation of the policy. This is the first time where we are focusing on this. On the age group of 3 to 8, knowing fully well that that is a time when the brain development is the fastest, and if we do not tap the brain development at that time, we have missed the bus. This thing is acknowledged. In fact, there is a sentence in the NEP which says that the rest of the policy will not be relevant if this is not achieved.
Yeah, we pick that and quote that everywhere.
Yes. So I think that is a very huge amount of work that we have to do, and the policy has come out with it, and we are really grateful that it is the right time and it has come out. The other thing which...
And there the main idea being that the students being able to do basic arithmetic and read with comprehension.
Literacy and numeracy.
By a certain
They
age.
should be able to achieve that by grade 3. The learning outcomes related to literacy and numeracy, all children should be able to achieve by grade 3. If a child is not able to read in grade 3, the child is not able to do any subject, whether it is maths, social studies, environmental science, nothing.
Yeah.
So that is the idea.
You can learn to read by then you can read by learning for the rest of your... You can learn by...
So, and the focus has to be on that age group. Similarly, the second point that I wanted to make is about the language. So, you know, this first time it is being reiterated, though it is mentioned in the RTE Act. But here in this policy, it is mentioned that the importance of education and in the medium of instruction to be the mother tongue or the language known to the child. I think this kind of reiteration that it should, you know, wherever possible up to grade 5 and if possible up to grade 8, I think this is path-breaking. We are, in any case, we are trying to decolonize our mindsets, and, you know, the whole discussion on decolonization has taken a huge... I mean, it's all over. It is the right time. Why thrust a foreign language on a child who for the last 3-4 years of his or her life has not even heard a single word of that language? How is the child going to learn? How is the child going to be comfortable? How is the child going to feel safe learning in that learning environment where the child has no idea what he's being spoken, you know, in which language he's spoken to? So I think this is path-breaking. This is my second thing. The third thing that I feel is in the curriculum, the whole chapter, you know, there is a chapter 4, which is based on curriculum. And the whole thrust is on skill-based education. What I mean by skill is skills, abilities, and competencies, which help a person to take care of everyday real-life situations, to handle real-life situations. So the whole approach is skill-based. So it is not rote-based. We are getting out of the rote-based and looking at whether the child has creativity skills, whether the child is able to communicate, collaborate, whether critical thinking, whether problem solving is a skill that the child possesses. So the whole learning is now going to be competency and skill-based. I think that is huge. And this was much required, particularly in the 21st century.
So foundational literacy and numeracy, teaching in the mother tongue till grade 5 or up till grade 8 potentially, and skill-based education as opposed to rote learning. And great. The next thought that comes to my mind, and this is something that I often kind of feel, is that policy making is one part of the job, right? The second part is then translating that policy into action on the ground, and that's where sometimes this is an outstanding policy, but even if you have decent policy, the lot of the battle is lost when you kind of convert that into implementation or translate that into action on the ground. I know that while you were Secretary School Education, you came up with the Sarthak implementation plan, which would kind of enable implementation of NEP. But what is your confidence in terms of seeing NEP implemented over the next 5 to 10 years? If you were to, let's say it came out in 2020, let's see 2025 and 2030. What percentage of the policy do you really believe which will be translated on the ground in 5 years and 10 years? And what gives you that kind of confidence if you are kind of optimistic?
So let me start with the breaking news. By 2030, 100% of the policy will be definitely implemented. I have complete confidence in that.
Okay.
Now, let me start with what has happened. So after the policy came out, as you rightly pointed out, we first of all prepared a plan called Sarthak, which we prepared in consultation with the states and with various other bodies like the SCRTs, NCRT, the CBSE, the state boards, etc. Then what we did is, now if you look at the policy in school education, there are two aspects to it. There is one aspect which is totally NCF dependent, the National Curriculum Framework dependent. There are others which are independent of the National Curriculum Framework. So we decided that while the National Curriculum Framework is being developed, let us focus on implementing those which are not dependent on the National Curriculum Framework. And as you may be aware, a major chunk of it, in fact, the day I retired, we sat and counted how much of it we have done. 120 initiatives, and I'll just mention some of them. So foundational literacy and numeracy mission called NIPUN Bharat, this was launched in 21 July,
yes,
as you may be aware. And this actually encompasses not only the whole skill-based education approach of learning outcomes, etc. It also talks about play-based pedagogy, how to do assessment, how teachers are to be trained, how local self-governments are to be involved, how parents and community is to be involved, etc. So it's a very comprehensive guidelines that we prepared, and then we followed it up with funding and restructuring the whole Samagra Shiksha program on the 5+3+3+4 basis, ensuring that enough funds go to the states, and then the whole model started. We did a baseline survey, NAS, as you know, the National Achievement Survey, to tell the states where you stand, because this was pandemic and things were a little difficult. And with that, the states know where they stand and they know where they have to reach. So that was the first thing we did. Aside from this, there are several other interventions that we did. First of all, you may be knowing about Nishtha. I'm not very sure if you know. That is the teacher training program. So during the pandemic, everybody thought that we will have to stop it because it was a face-to-face program. We made it a blended approach and online, completely online during the pandemic. The policy says that minimum 50 hours of CPD, continuous professional development of teachers, is a must every year. We ensured that all teachers through Nishtha at least have it. The state governments can augment it with their own training. So that is the second thing that happened, major thing. The third thing was the technology aspect, integrating technology into education. Because of the pandemic, you know, the speed with which it happened, and Diksha, the platform, which was already there, it was developed further. We managed to get something like, I think, over 2 lakh pieces of e-content. More than 45 crore textbooks were QR coded with the e-content. Teachers were trained. Lot of training happened in digital literacy. Aside from this, you know, inclusion pe bahut kaam hua hai. Indian Sign Language ko standardize karke, we had to come out with a dictionary of 10,000 words. That was completed with the help of the ministry, the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment, the Disability Department. And after that, what we did was we started giving content on Diksha. We have talking books or audio books for visually impaired. We have Indian Sign Language content for the hearing impaired. All this happened during this period. Then aside from that, virtual labs for children to make things more engaging. So what I'm trying to tell you is that there were so many initiatives. A major initiative also happened on the assessment side. The Central Board of Secondary Education reformed its assessment because assessment is now to be competency based. I'm glad to tell you that by 2025, both 10th standard and 12th standard question papers will have minimum 60% items or questions based on competency. Because it started in 2020.
Yeah.
By 2025, we'll complete it. It's already there. This year, I think 30% ho chuka hai.
Yeah.
So all this was things which were not dependent on the NCF. So we have already started it. And we had this outreach with the states during the pandemic, because this video conferencing became a very big thing. So I used to meet the states twice a month, and everything that is new, what is to be done, talking to each state, finding out the gaps, helping them, calling them to Delhi, giving them resources, etc., etc. All that happened during this period. And the states also came closer to the center, I feel, because of so much of closeness. And it helps for them to be close to the center, because the policy level, the implementation level, understanding is much better at the center than at the states.
Yeah. No, I'm fully with you. I can vouch for a lot of things that you're saying, because we being in the states are seeing and also kind of helping, supporting the states in driving a lot of these things that you're talking about. But overall, if you look at the full funnel, there's the policy, there is enabling implementation of the policy, which is what you're saying of the 120 items that have been kind of done while you were still there, non-NCF linked pieces. Then there's, of course, the input that goes into the classroom, to the teachers and so on. There's the output of that, which is actual training happening, the quality of training being good, assessments happening, results coming. And then there is the outcome, which is the learning outcome of the student kind of increasing eventually, including in NIPUN, where we want to get all the students to be competent in FLN. Now, from an outcome perspective, what's your kind of sense? Because again, different implementation is with the states. Different states would kind of move at different pace. So what's your general sense, optimism on the outcome side by 2030?
So I want to give you two examples which will tell you why I'm so confident. So the Honorable Prime Minister, he gave us directions that why don't you pick up the least performing districts of the country, 8 to 10 of them, work on them for a year, have certain objectives which are to be achieved, and see if they can be achieved with all that you are doing right now. So we picked up 10 districts in the country, and they are called LPDs, low performing districts, across the country. And then what we did was that first, of course, we trained them, etc. And the objective was that they had performed very badly in NAS in 2017. So we said that in the first year, you have to reach your state average. They were the lowest performing in their states. And in the second year, you have to reach the national average. Now for that, and we put the district magistrates in charge. And for that, after a lot of discussion, we realized that they are not well trained or do not have that kind of capacity. So we decided to handhold. And we prepared a step-by-step kind of a thing, intervention that they have to take. I'm glad to tell you that after 1 year, 8 districts came out. So, which shows that all the work that we had been doing, something good is possible to come out of it. That is the first thing I want to tell you. The second thing I want to tell you is that you may have heard of the PM Shri initiative. Yes. Now, the PM Shri initiative is all about schools being selected, 14,000 odd schools being selected, and then we give quality assurance. We say that in the coming 4 to 5 years, these schools will achieve this quality and they will deliver this quality to their stakeholders. Now, when we started this scheme, the Honorable Prime Minister gave us directions that selection will not happen automatically on the basis of statistics. Let it be through challenge method. So the selection was through a challenge method. The challenge method required, there were 60 indicators, and they have to ensure that they reach those indicators. Rural schools had to have 60% reach, and urban schools minimum 70%. Only then they can cross the challenge. When we started the first round, there are going to be 8 rounds, of opening the portal in which challenge will happen. We expected that in each round there will be approximately 1,500 to 2,000 schools. In the first round, we have selected 6,500 schools. So the schools are actually wanting to excel. The system is wanting to excel. There is a hope. There is a motivation. And we can see it.
Right.
We can see it happening everywhere. Of course, there are patches where things are not happening at all. But those patches do not define what is happening today.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm personally very optimistic. I'm asking all of these things, but I'm personally very optimistic. I see the change on the ground, in the mindset, in the ability that some things can happen, and the enablement that's being done for that. That's very, very visible. That's very palpable. It's about leveraging all of that to really deliver it for our students. That's the game in the coming 5 to 10 years. As you said, and we strongly believe also at Samagra that the action is in the states. So we do most of our work in the states because we fundamentally believe that if India has to transform, it has to be state by state by state. Government of India has an important role to play. That's a more enabling role. As in this particular case, the policy framework being there, the budgets being there, the narrative being there, the focus on the right things. But really, the delivery has to happen by the states, right? And you also kind of cut your teeth in education in Gujarat when you're a Gujarat cadre IAS officer, and you were Secretary School Education there. You had other responsibilities at different points of time. That's when I'm assuming the real learning in school education happened. You picked up the nuances of what's really happening on the ground, and that's all feeds into eventually as secretary kind of shaping the NEP. Can you just share with me a little bit about your early years when you kind of got into education? What were the kind of learnings you had? What are the kind of responsibilities you had, which I'm assuming shaped your thought process earlier?
So I have
थोड़ा सा मतलब डिटेल में कि क्या क्या आपकी पोस्टिंग थी वहाँ पे, क्या एक्सपीरियंस?
इट वाज नॉट जो सेक्रेटरी वाला जो फेज था वो तो बाद में आया,
वो तो
उसके पहले से ये शुरू हो गया था. सो व्हाट हैपेंस हमारी सर्विस में, हमारे इंडियन एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सर्विस में शुरू से ही यू बिकम डिस्ट्रिक्ट या सब डिस्ट्रिक्ट के इंचार्ज आप हो जाते हैं, तो आपको उसमें हर एक चीज़ देखनी पड़ती है. तो एज एसडीएम थोड़ा बहुत देखा, बट इतना रियलाइज नहीं किया कि कितनी टेक्निकल चीज़ है ये. स्कूल एजुकेशन हैज़ बिकम वेरी टेक्निकल. इट इज़ नॉट सिंपल कि आप स्कूल में पढ़ते थे सो यू नो व्हाट यू हैव टू डू इन स्कूल एजुकेशन. इट्स नॉट लाइक दैट, एंड पीपल फील इट इज़ लाइक दैट. इट इजंट. इट्स हाईली टेक्निकल. जस्ट डाइग्रेसिंग, हमको एक शब्दकोश निकालनी पड़ी थी. This we took it out in July last year of the technical terms being used in school education, because when we used to approach district magistrates, they used to say ये क्या होता है, वो क्या होता है, competency क्या होती है, learning outcome क्या होता है, GER क्या होता है. तो हमको ये एक शब्दकोश निकालना पड़ा था. So anyway, so उसके बाद then the next phase came when you become the CEO of a Zilla Panchayat. उसमें you are very closely associated. You are running the primary education of the district. So that 3 साल का जो मेरा एक्सपीरियंस था वो उसमें, this was in Rajkot, in district of Rajkot. उसमें मतलब I worked, this was a passion, it became a passion area for me just then, and I worked day and night. उसमें बहुत मेहनत की, डाइट्स के ऊपर मेहनत करी, स्कूल्स के ऊपर करी, पेरेंट टीचर्स मीटिंग को सिस्टमेटाइज करने की कोशिश करी, करिकुलम ट्रांजैक्शंस में, पेडागोजी में कुछ इनोवेशंस लाने की, लॉट ऑफ स्टफ वी वर डूइंग एट दैट टाइम. आई थिंक द टर्निंग पॉइंट फॉर मी वाज व्हेन आई गॉट अ पनिशमेंट पोस्टिंग.
You got a
punishment posting, as they say.
Yes.
Overnight.
Yeah.
Just shifted from here. You're not doing okay here. Go there. And that is a posting where no IAS officer before me or after me has ever been posted.
Okay.
This was an NGO called Mahila Samakhya. You may have heard of it. It was being funded by Netherlands government at that time through the central government.
So as an IAS officer, you were made head of that NGO.
I was made head of that NGO. IAS officers के लिए नहीं था.
Exactly.
What they used to do is they used to do interviews and get somebody from the social like CSO or somebody who's headed a CSO or worked in a CSO, उसको बनाया जाता था. बट मुझे पनिशमेंट पोस्टिंग में वहाँ रखा गया. महिला समाख्या का जो मेन रोल था was education for girl child and women.
Okay.
This was what Mahila Samakhya was all about. So that was the first time when I went to the grassroots, because as a CSO जैसे आप लोग काम करते हो, मैं भी झोला लेके कोल्हापुरी चप्पल पहन के मैं भी घूमती थी. रात को किसी के घर रुक गई गाँव में. That's what I also did for that 1.5-2 years. I tell you, it was an eye-opener. I visited so many schools, I visited so many villages, sat down with women, understood their problems, why they don't send the girl child to school, what happens during menstruation, why there are no toilets, so many things.
What were some counterintuitive insights that you kind of gathered that time? Because जब आप फील्ड में जाते हैं तो आपको कई ऐसी चीजें जो आपको मतलब आप कमरे में बैठ के सोच भी नहीं सकते. You kind of get to know that, and that's real.
The first thing that just I became an advocate. Toilets in school. टॉयलेट्स नहीं होने के वजह से लड़के भी नहीं जाते, लड़कियां भी नहीं जाती. और टॉयलेट्स में अगर पानी नहीं हो तो बिल्कुल नहीं जाएंगे. सो दिस वाज समथिंग, एंड at that time in Gujarat, itne, this I'm talking about 94, 9.
No, that's a long time back.
Long time back, yeah.
उस समय there was no such Bharat.
तो कुछ भी नहीं था, and
total sanitation.
You can imagine what kind of schools were there. Aside from that, the distance of schools. तो उस वक्त infrastructure भी इतना ज़्यादा नहीं फैला हुआ था, तो लड़कियों को हम नहीं भेजेंगे, distance हो जाता है. Then there was of course the issue of the language. I mean, they कुछ खड़ी बोली टाइप की बोलते थे, और some tribal language, tribal dialect, particularly in the tribal areas. They were not understanding the Gujarati medium. So all this I learned at that time, which has now come in the NEP, and I feel as if I have been vindicated.
Yeah.
Because at that time I used to feel so upset about this whole thing. And the ladies used to ask me कि आपके बच्चों को problem नहीं होती है क्या? And I used to feel so guilty and so shameful. कि I am teaching my children in English medium schools. I speak at home in English. उनको तो कोई problem नहीं होती, and they have toilets in the school. It was a phase which was learning. It was all kinds of things. It was inspiration. It was motivation. So that is how I really got passionate about this sector. उसके बाद, of course, as DM, and then when I was in the municipal corporation also, Deputy Municipal Commissioner, I was looking after school education at that time. Ahmedabad. That time also. So ये सब करते करते, then finally I became Secretary Education
in the state.
Of the state. And that is the time when Kanya Kedavni Yatra had just picked up.
So tell a little bit about that.
Okay, so this is again the brainchild of the Honorable PM, ably aided by his then Education Minister Anandi Ben, and who is now the Honorable Governor of UP. And so the whole idea was that at the time of enrollment, that is the month of June, जब सारे बच्चों को स्कूल आना चाहिए, particularly the young kids who have to join school for the first time, it is good to have a celebratory atmosphere, and to celebrate their
coming to the school,
and particularly the girl child coming to the school. It was decided that on the first day of the school or the second day of the school, the entire government would stop functioning and would find itself in the villages and remote areas, encouraging them, talking to them, being with them.
So all the ministers,
everybody, all officers,
bureaucrats,
everybody, including the Honorable Chief Minister. In fact, he would select the remotest of schools. हम लोग तो मतलब officers का होता था कि हमको थोड़ा urban area में दे दो, थोड़ा ज़्यादा नहीं जाना पड़े. Sir would select सबसे कोने वाला, सबसे अंदर वाला school, and he'll go and stay there for 3 days. Yeah. So it was very inspiring what he was doing. And even ma'am, yes, she would do the same thing. Even the ministers, I mean, many of the ministers would ask for remote areas, So
that's something that happened while you were Secretary of School Education. That's the time it got initiated.
Yeah, it had started.
It was all interesting, very interesting, because at the time I was starting Samagra, I really traveled extensively across the country, and this was one of the initiatives that I heard about. This was one, and second was Gunotsav.
Yeah, so Kanya Kedavni had started before me. I structured it quite a bit when I joined. And Gunotsav, we had started discussing it, but it was taken up just after I left.
Okay.
But during my time, 2 initiatives which I can never forget and which have had a huge impact on education, 2 or 3 initiatives rather. One was the Indian Institute of Teacher Education, the 4-year B.Ed program.
Okay.
जब पूरा देश इसके बारे में नहीं सोच रहा था, NCERT के सिवाय और कोई 4 साल का B.Ed नहीं चलाता था पूरे देश में, और NCERT के तो 4-5 ही इंस्टीट्यूट थे. Gujarat thought of it, led by, of course, our Honorable Chief Minister. And this 4-year B.Ed program, through selection mode, examination mode, it became so popular. Today, it's one of the, best programs in the country. The second initiative during that time was the Children's University. So that was very interesting. The whole idea कि specific university होनी चाहिए children के लिए, जिसमें सिर्फ बच्चों के ऊपर research हो, उनकी psychology, neurology, social science, whatever, उसके ऊपर research हो. That was such a novel concept. So that also came up. Of course, many other things happened, but I found that later on when the Forensic Science University, the Raksha Shakti University, the Marine University, one realized how important these are. उस वक्त पता नहीं लगता था okay, university set up करना है.
There are also long-term investments being made to kind of in the space of field of education. They may not yield result tomorrow.
Yes.
They kind of yield result.
Education was very important for the government. It was really important, and what the teachers are doing, what kind of training, because in my time I had taken up this huge training program. In fact, I used to do all kinds of innovative training. I remember contacting, I did not contact, actually the Honorable Chief Minister, his office called me one day that Dr. Swaroop Sampath is here and she wants to do something in education. I thought, she's an actor. Ye kya karengi? Then I met her and I got to know she's an educationist. She's a specialist in integrating theatre with learning. So we said, okay, I said, आप सारे पूरे गुजरात को आप train करो. It was tremendous. It was a brilliant idea, and it
using basically
innovative ideas. Yeah.
Theatre.
Theatre. She uses theatre for learning. So to teach geography, she'll use theatre. To teach maths, she'll use theatre. Life skills.
Teachers on it.
She trained teachers on it. And she would then showcase, the children would showcase what they have learned through theatre, And this sort of opened this whole new world to the teachers that you can innovate your pedagogy. There is no limit to it. एक वो था पहले चलता था ना कि नहीं वो ड्यूई को फॉलो करो, पियाजे को फॉलो करो, उसको करो, उसमें पहले ये होगा, फिर वो होगा, पहले प्रायर लर्निंग देखो, फिर एक्सप्लोर करो, फिर ऐसे करो. No. And my belief is also this. क्लास के लिए जो भी एप्ट है, जो कॉम्बिनेशन करना है करो. As long as it's engaging, it's joyful, it's innovative, just go ahead.
Teachers become very, very important in the scheme of things. You said that it was very important priority for the government, for the Chief Minister. Mr. Modi was the Chief Minister at the time. What are the kind of inputs that you would get from him while you were in Gujarat as Secretary of Education? What are the kind of ideas or inputs that will have? And also subsequently in the NEP, in the drafting of the NEP, what was his guidance or what were the inputs that came directly from him?
So Gujarat, like I told you, all the initiatives that I have mentioned are led by
brainchild.
Yes. So I mean, there are many more, but what I've mentioned is all his brainchild. I used to always wonder. We used to think हम लोग एक बार IAS में आ जाते हैं that we are God's gift to mankind or something. But the kind of vision he has, मुझे हमेशा लगता था कि मैंने पहले क्यों नहीं सोचा. हम सोच ही नहीं पाते थे जो उनकी सोच है इतनी ऊंची और इतनी डिफरेंट, वो हम सोच ही नहीं पाते थे. So I used to feel, we used to, all officers.
One more example of that, where you felt कि कुछ something he shared कि ऐसे कर सकते हैं and it was very good.
I'll tell you from NEP. तो NEP का हम लोग का discussion होता था Honorable Prime Minister के साथ 4-4, 5-5 घंटे होता था और 3-4 बार, before it was finalized, he would listen to every paragraph, every word, everything said, and then he will give his inputs. तो हम लोग बात कर रहे थे assessment की, कि assessment competency based होगा ये सर ये सब तो ठीक है, पर आप जो वो रिपोर्ट कार्ड देते हो ना बच्चे को, उससे वो डिमोटिवेट हो जाता है बच्चा. एंड वो फिर उसमें कहीं माइनस, वो रेड साइन आ गया, कहीं कुछ हो गया, एंड वो उसका पूरा मतलब द होल इंस्पिरेशन टू लर्न इज गॉन. तो ही सेड कि आप इसको अब होलिस्टिक प्रोग्रेस कार्ड दो, जिसमें उसके सिर्फ academic side nahi, but every part of his potential, his unique potential, whether it is the physical domain, whether it is arts and craft, vocational, sab usme aana chahiye. And it should be a holistic progress card in which there is self-assessment, there is peer assessment, parent assessment, teacher, matlab 360 degrees. That whole paragraph has been given by him. It was his idea. हम लोग ने तो सोचा ही नहीं था इसके बारे में. So, इस तरह के NEP में he has given several ideas. There is one place where you will see how the Anganwadi wadis have to, the primary school has to partner Anganwadis. And there has to be exchange between the teachers, between the students. So that there is good exposure to these bachas from the Anganwadi, and when they join the school, they don't feel lost.
They feel it
has come from the Prime Minister. It didn't come from us. So ऐसे करके काफ़ी सारे lot of small ideas. जब हम लोग रेगुलेशन की बात कर रहे थे तो हम लोगों ने प्रपोज किया था कि एक स्टेट स्टैंडर्डाइजिंग अथॉरिटी बनेगी, ओके, विच इज़ गोइंग टू look at all public schools, private schools, whether they're following standards or not.
Define standards.
Define standards, and then they will take action against them. He said, no, ये इंस्पेक्टर राज वगैरह बंद करो. And he said कि इसको जो है सेल्फ रेगुलेटरी करो और पब्लिक डोमेन में डाल दो. Let the public decide. If the public says कि ये झूठ बोल रहा है, इसने सेल्फ रेगुलेशन में लिखा है कि they have done this, ये झूठ बोल रहा है, इन्होंने नहीं किया है. That is the time you go in, see if you need to hold their hand, take them forward, or you need to take action. That is the time. There will be no authority. So these are things which are very futuristic, very positive approach to education, which came from him.
And he devoted that time, you're saying, multiple sessions.
Hours together. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Why do you think, given also you're saying the Prime Minister himself is kind of so keen and so interested in education, both as a Chief Minister and now, in general in politics, why don't you see education become an election agenda? Right? One of the things in a democracy is that if elections are fought on saying that I will provide good quality education, that means that the chances of that happening are much higher. We've seen an exception in Delhi when the AAP government kind of made it kind of an agenda because they had done work in school education. But in general, by and large in the country, since independence, that's not become an agenda. What do you see is the reason for it? Is it the confidence in the political class to deliver on that? कि हम promise तो करेंगे, but let's say पता नहीं ये 5 साल की period में deliver हो सकता है नहीं हो सकता? Is that the reason? Or there's a sense that it may not be something that's vote catching? That is the reason. What is your own kind of sense on that?
I suspect it will become an agenda henceforth. It's not been in the agenda because it has been on the back burner for a long time.
Yeah.
Education is just something जो हो जाता है, अपने आप से हो जाता है. हम 50 साल से देख रहे हैं, 60 साल से देख रहे हैं. Education used to be a punishment posting in states.
Yeah.
I think it is now, I find after the NEP, things have changed. There is this urge to do, implement NEP and take up initiatives and all. इसके पहले तो नहीं था. So maybe that is the reason, because the stock of the society believes that, it is something which is unimportant, it is a punishment area, अपने आप हो जाएगा, इसमें ज़्यादा करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. But post NEP, I suspect it will start becoming an agenda.
You feel that?
I feel that, yes.
And you believe then that if once it becomes an agenda, it will be taken more seriously, there will be more focus. If elections are fought on education, then there's a discourse around it, there will be more effort and so on.
Absolutely. It should be one of the agendas, yeah.
And you see that kind of beginning.
I feel it is going to happen, yes.
You're talking a lot about the Prime Minister and when he was Chief Minister. What is it like working with him as a bureaucrat, right? In general, not just the specific inputs on education, but what kind of a political executive is he? What kind of a leader is he as a bureaucrat from your kind of vantage point? What's been your observation? You worked a lot with him as a district collector. I think you were district collector. That's the time he was Chief Minister. He was Secretary School Education in the state. He was Chief Minister. Of course, now in the center you've seen it. What's been the experience? What are some of the traits that kind of stand out for you?
So that's a very interesting question. So I would like to start by saying that Sir has a very unique perspective on governance. And this perspective has come out of his long-standing experience at the grassroots. We are all aware that he has lived his previous life prior to coming into politics with people. लोगों के साथ रहना, उनको समझना, उनकी दिक्कतें समझना, उनका सुख दुख बांटना, मतलब he has been there. He knows all the challenges that they go through, चाहे वो school education हो, चाहे वो agriculture है, चाहे बिजली, पानी, सड़क, मकान, everything. He has been through it.
And all of it is lived experience. It's
lived
not
experience.
read
And
in
lived
books.
experience is a very rich experience.
Yes.
And that is what shows in his vision, because he is a visionary. he doesn't believe that small patchwork से कोई काम हो सकता है. कुछ करना है तो transform करो, reform करो. He doesn't hesitate in reforming. Very small things which probably the public doesn't know. Small things like looking at laws. कि laws में burden क्या है आम इंसान के ऊपर. अगर किसी लॉ में लिखा है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई वॉज टोल्ड दैट देयर इज सम लॉ विच सेज कि अगर आपने अपने बाथरूम को अंदर से वाइट वॉश नहीं किया हर 6 महीने में तो आपको इतना फाइन देना पड़ेगा. ये लॉ चला आ रहा है, किस जमाने से चला आ रहा है. सो ही सेड लुक एट इट, रिमूव इट. उसके ऊपर 50 केस, 5,000, 10,000, लाखों केस सिविल कोर्ट्स वगैरह में चल रहे होंगे. तो इस तरह की एक एक चीज में घुसना, टू लुक एट इट एंड टेल अस टू रिफॉर्म एंड ट्रांसफॉर्म सो दैट आम आदमी को कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं हो. द कॉमन मैन अंडरस्टैंड्स दैट गवर्नमेंट इज लुकिंग आफ्टर हिम और हर. I think that kind of a vision I have never seen in my entire career. I have done almost 37 years in the government. This is the first time I have come across such a visionary, such a tall person. I have not come across. I mean, I may appear biased. I may appear like a huge fan or something, but I'm telling you from my professional experience. Professionally, he's very sound. He is the best that I have seen in my career.
And again, one is the vision part of it. Second is in dealing with the bureaucracy, right? In terms of giving space, in terms of working with the team. What are the issues there that you've kind of seen?
He gives space. He wants you to innovate. He wants you to take up new work. He wants you to suggest reforms. He would call groups of us and say कि बताओ क्या करना है? Do you have ideas? चिंतन शिविर में यही तो होता था. All of us had to come up with ideas. I recall,
He used to do Chintan Shivir in Gujarat also?
Yes. And
what was the first experience of a Chintan Shivir?
Yeah, so the first Chintan Shivir, I was district magistrate of Ahmedabad. And we were all told कि कुछ अच्छा innovative idea लेकर के आओ और इसकी presentation करनी है. So I went on stage and I presented my whole idea of Jan Seva Kendra.
Okay.
And Jan Seva Kendra was a one-stop shop which was, augmented by technology, where a person can go into the district magistrate's office and all the services which are to be delivered by the district magistrate would be delivered inside the Jan Seva Kendra. And it would be a nameless, faceless interaction. The person doesn't have to wait outside the SDM's room or outside the Mamladar's room or my room. It will just happen in the Jan Seva Kendra.
So it's in the mini secretariat. It's kind of, instead of meeting the DM, you meet this operator or this person.
And there is a procedure which has been established. Number of days are fixed. Itne din mein hoga hi. All that. So all the good governance items would be there. So I presented this there and I was asked ki uske liye aapko kya chahiye. So at that time, I remember the office of the district magistrate of Ahmedabad used to be in the erstwhile civil hospital of the Britishers.
Okay.
So my room, as district magistrate room, had no windows and it had tiles even on the ceiling. The side, white tile नहीं होती bathroom वाली, वो चारों तरफ थी. मैं उसमें बैठती थी. उसके just पहले earthquake हुआ था, तो half of my office had fallen down.
अच्छा.
So my people used to अपने desk को कहीं निकाल के किसी shade में बैठ जाते थे. There was no office basically. And there was this half completed building of the PWD in a better area. And in that meeting, I requested कि I want to shift there. And I want to start the Jan Seva Kendra. So I was told कि funds का क्या करोगी? Then I said CSR. But उसके लिए मुझे government की direction चाहिए. I should have some government resolution saying I can take CSR and what is the procedure for taking CSR. He said okay. The Chintan Shivir got over. The next week I had my government resolution in my hand, ye lo. And I remember on stage he had asked me कि it was the month of July or August when we did the Chintan Shivir कि ये कब पूरा करेंगे. तो I said sir January. He said ठीक है 26 जनवरी के आसपास हम inaugurate करेंगे. That's what happened. 25 या 27 जनवरी को उसका inauguration हुआ था.
And this is before the era of common services centers. Or common service centers existed at a time, which is basically a village level entrepreneur to whom citizens can
CSC
come.
had not started at that time. No, it had
This
not
is a similar concept. Of course, this is different.
This is 2003.
Okay. So this is in the DM's office, in the district collector's office, but Common Services Centers is extending the same thing to an village level entrepreneur in every village, where people can come to pay a small 10 rupees, 20 rupee fee and get all the government schemes and services availed. So that concept. This is basically in some sense then the genesis.
It was like a precursor
to that.
So this was about 21 years back. Yeah. So that's the kind of support, the kind of space he would give us to perform, and never insulted us. Anybody. I have never seen him do that. He'll be firm with you, but एक जो सिस्टम है ना हमारे यहाँ अभी भी इंडिया में है कि आपके सीनियर हैं तो आपके ऊपर फाइल फेंकेंगे, आपके मंत्री हैं तो आपको 2-4 गाली दे देंगे. Never. Upheld our dignity.
Firm but polite.
Firm, polite, upholding our dignity, but also ensuring that we work. Yeah. Giving us good guidance. Yeah. Taking decisions. Yeah.
Interesting. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, which you had shared with me, that you're a big kind of proponent of, is technology in governance, right? We at Samagra again believe a lot in it. We believe that, in fact, that's one thing that gives hope that we can really leapfrog as a country when it comes to governance on the back of technology. We house all our GovTech and DataGov work under an umbrella called Samagra X. We're doing 2-3 things. One is just the work that we're doing with the states. How do you support the states in thinking through tech products, tech platforms? The second part of it is really pushing the envelope on what is possible through technology inside the governance. So really innovation. And third is the more recent thing, which is digital public goods. How do you create public infrastructure, technology infrastructure that can be used by everyone? But you have been you've been practicing, and the example that you also gave, the Jan Seva Kendra, is essentially an example from 20 years back. We are talking today, but you're talking 20 years back when you were begun to kind of start using technology for governance. Share a little bit about that. When did it start? Was this the beginning of it? And how have you used technology in the different kind of postings that you've had over the years? And what's your general belief when it comes to technology in governance?
So, yeah, computers and internet technology and IT was not really there in the 80s when I joined service in 88. 90s में थोड़ा आने लगा था. And the first time I really came across it was when I was in the Municipal Corporation of Ahmedabad as Deputy Municipal Commissioner.
This was 90s में था.
This was 96, 97.
Okay.
And their Municipal Corporation had already started using whatever technology was available for, particularly for data. Data के लिए, and also for things like generating analysis and stuff like that. And also I remember way back in 96 when I joined the corporation, हम लोग को mobile phone दिया गया था. That was the first time. पूरे state में और किसी के पास नहीं था, पर Municipal Corporation of Ahmedabad के पास था.
It's a rich, relatively kind of financially sound body.
It was, yeah. And the phone was like a weapon. इतना बड़ा सा था, फेंक के मारो तो पत्थर से भी ज़्यादा चोट लगे. It was a huge one. तो उसके लिए मतलब बैग लेके चलना पड़ता था because it was so huge you couldn't carry it in your hands. So that was the first time. And then of course subsequently in all my postings, कुछ छोटा मोटा I have always done. Here in the central government, the scope expanded to the whole country because that time I was only looking after the state, and here the scope expanded, and to expand the scope, one realized that the quality of technology is also important. And when Diksha started coming up, for example, that is the time I realized how important quality is, because Diksha is one of the highest qualities. It's on the Sunbird platform of Ekstep, as you know. And the kind of scope it has, the kind of evolvability it has, I have not seen it in my life, and that really inspired me and motivated me. And that's how Endear also, when the Ministry of IT approached me that they want to do something, I jumped at it. And that's how Endear also took birth.
So this is all how do you build really population scale tech infra, right? Sunbird is an example of that, on which Diksha is an instance of that for the Ministry of Education, on which all the teachers kind of get trained and many other things happen. So yeah, that's really, basically that's the space where India is taking the lead.
Yes.
and really demonstrating how population scale
Yes.
infra can be built.
Actually, NDR has been declared a global public good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
India is a national digital education architecture which really aims in the next 5 to 10 years to get education, technology and education become interoperable across kind of
So
things,
here
across
the
public,
whole
private.
idea of NDR is that if there is some innovation happening in, say, Gujarat, then Karnataka need not repeat it. Because if we follow the standards laid down by NDR, then anybody can replicate it. So one, it is interoperable. Two, it is based on registry,
Yes.
which means there is a student, teacher, and school registry. So I'm glad to tell you that almost 80% registry of students is over. 80% students are registered. So, with the help of registry, it operates. It also has a sandbox, which is very interesting. So experimentation can also happen. So people can come in and go out, and so a lot of innovation can happen. So NTR is a very large interoperable architecture, which
it can really be game changing in the next decade. And it's a kind of network effect. More people kind of registries are there, and then more and more kind of services get onto it. More and more ecosystem players get onto it. That's when the real benefit of it will start accruing. Yeah, that's really, India is really at the cutting edge of technology thinking. And I think you sowed the seed of that while you were there as Secretary of School Education. Great. तो ये काफ़ी सारी काम की बात हो गई. I think I want to really talk about the other aspects of your life, and that's what really fascinated me when I was talking to you a couple of months back. And one of that is spirituality. Right. All of us are spiritual beings, but I can tell about myself. My own journey started just about 2 years back. Very, very basic in terms of my understanding, a conscious journey basically. And subconsciously, everyone is on that path. But very basic in my understanding, very basic in my sadhana, in my practices. But you've been on the path, and from what I could gather, making progress on that path for now, 3 to 4 decades. Started for you as a child itself, you were telling me. So just share with me how it started as a child and how you've kind of built upon that aspect of your life. I would love to kind of understand the details of that.
So the journey is a lot of ups and downs. So I belong to a place called Munger in Bihar. And Munger has a Bihar school of yoga.
Which is very, very famous.
Very famous.
Bihar yoga.
They don't advertise for themselves. They are very quiet people. So as a child, my father used to take me there. And during summer holidays when I would go, to zarur wahan visit karte the. Then again as a child, since I'm asthmatic, so I used to be constantly having this cough and cold and all these issues, and nobody really knew at that time. Asthma was not known that time, or if it was known, it was not diagnosed. So my father in Delhi would then take me to the yoga classes of Dhirendra Brahmachari. If you've heard the name.
Yes, I've very much heard the name.
He's more infamous than famous.
Famous with this thing. And,
but what I was struck by as a child, I think I was 9 or 10 years old when I started going to his classes in the morning. 5 baje subah.
To do yoga.
To do yoga.
Classical.
हाँ, और बाहर होता था in a open place. उनके आश्रम था वहाँ पे. And गर्मियों में भी 5 बजे, winters में भी 5 बजे. 5 बजे सुबह जब हम जाते थे, धीरेन्द्र ब्रह्मचारी 1 डिग्री टेम्परेचर में एक धोती पहन करके बेयर टॉप वहाँ बैठ करके हमको योगा कराते थे. हम लोग ठिठुर रहे होते थे ठंड में. एंड आई वाज रियली इम्प्रेस्ड कि ये मतलब कैसी साधना है कि दिस पर्सन इज एबल टू विथस्टैंड द कोल्ड. एंड उसके बाद माई मदर, बोथ पेरेंट्स वर वेरी स्पिरिचुअल. माई मदर पर्टिकुलरली, शी ऑल्सो देन स्टार्टेड टेलिंग me about Bhagwad Gita and the Upanishads. उनकी बड़ी deep study थी. But as a child, I think I was not paying much attention, to be very frank.
It's also heavy from a...
Very heavy, and I could not understand. And she would try and tell me in story form. And but yeah, it didn't really register. But I realized that doing all this yoga, and I learned meditation at a very early age. I mean, Dhirendra Brahmachari taught us meditation. I didn't know it was meditation. He used to just say कि चुपचाप बैठे रहो बस, आँख बंद करो और बैठे रहो. बच्चों को, सारे जो बच्चे आते थे हम लोग, we didn't know we were meditating. हम बस चुपचाप आँख बंद करके बैठे रहते थे. So I think I realized over time I had become a very calm person, very content. In fact, when I joined the service, met my husband, got married, he would often tell me कि यहाँ इस पोस्टिंग में मज़ा नहीं आ रहा, उसमें अच्छा लगा था, यहाँ ठीक नहीं लग रहा. And I used to say, मुझे तो कहीं भी भेज दो, मैं तो सब जगह खुश हूँ. तो he started calling me Swami ji. He used to say, आप स्वामी जी हो, आपकी बात और है. The fact is, I have no ambition. Wherever I go, I worked the hardest, best, but I don't have an ambition कि मुझे, Finance Secretary of India बनना है. No such ambition. I was just content with whatever I got. Wherever I went, I gave my best. And I realized that yoga had something to do with it. So along the way, I again started taking lessons with my mother just before she died of cancer. She died in 2000. And when she was on bedridden for 5 years, that is a time when I would spend a lot of time with her. And she started introducing me to the Bhagwad Gita.
Again, made an attempt in the childhood.
And then I understood it. And then I started reading and practicing meditation. For various reasons, I found that meditation really calmed me. And stress of office, stress of home, घर में 2 बच्चे, वो बहुत कुछ करना पड़ता था. Atul would be transferred in some other district. I would be in some other district. एक बच्चा उसके पास, एक बच्चा मेरे पास. It used to be very tough, very stressful. So it used to help me. And then I started, going to all of these Gurujis. इधर गए, उधर गए.
कहाँ गए?
बहुत जगह गई हूँ मैं. लद्दाख में बुद्धिस्ट्स के पास गई हूँ, हिमाचल में बुद्धिस्ट्स के पास गई हूँ. फिर श्री रविशंकर जी का पूरा कोर्स किया है मैंने बहुत कुछ किया. बट व्हाट इवेंचुअली हेल्प्ड मी वाज सिल्वा. And I think I've told you about this. Silva method is a method for getting you into that zone very quickly and in a very structured manner. And I found that it really helped my meditation. And I'm so grateful to that method. I recommend it to everybody. Uske baad se it has become.
So with Silva, you would kind of, with that technique, you'll get into the meditative zone and then you'll kind of continue there.
Yeah. After that,
and you will kind of mix it with your, the meditation that you're doing since childhood, or will kind of just do Silva now?
I follow something of my own. I have devised something myself now.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a technique when some of my friends, when they want to learn, मैं उनको सिखा देती हूँ. It's my own technique.
Okay.
But I go into that zone very fast and I'm able to stay in it for long times. I don't feel like coming out of it. So I'm very happy with that. Yeah. So yeah, that's my journey. And I find the Bhagavad Gita fascinating book.
It's profound.
It's kind profound. It's fascinating. It's thrilling.
Yeah. It's been 2 years I've read, I've completed only half of it, but I'm getting to very, very long discourses. So it's really going deep in that, some 110 odd discourses to cover half of it. But it's just, so I just feel that why didn't I get to it kind of much earlier in life?
I think it comes to you when you are ready.
Yeah, when you're ready.
The Gita says that also. Yeah. Comes to you only when you're ready. It will not come to you.
So
it's not a religious document. It's a philosophy of life.
Yes.
And I think at some point of time everybody should go through it.
And you're telling me that you read multiple interpretations of it because it's kind of...
Yes, because I started reading multiple interpretations because of the books that I've been writing. So I thought that I should understand it better because I'm self-taught. I don't have a guru and so... And self-teaching में क्या होता है कि you discover the nuances in every interpretation. तो जब मतलब 10वां पढ़ने के बाद 11वां पढ़ने के बाद बिल्कुल नया लगता है. I'm sure when I will read the 12वां, I'll find something absolutely new there. It lends itself to so much of scope of interpretation, so much in it. Yeah.
So which is the interpretation that you kind of follow?
I liked Chinmayanandaji's and Aurobindoji's. I like that. But I liked all of them. I mean,
it's essentially, it's same, but the way you kind of interpret it is different. The core of it is the same. There are different frameworks that can be put on top of that and so on. I thought कि मेरा आधा हो गया, but you're saying that you read more, then you'll kind of unearth more. That's the beauty of the text.
Yes. Yeah.
And all of this. So to what end? Basically, the spiritual journey. So one is the spirituality helping with the worldly life. as you're saying, kind of your work, there's stress at work, there's stress at home, and kind of this is what helps you kind of stay calm and so on. But again, you do see this headed in a more kind of profound way throughout your life, because goal of spirituality is not necessarily just kind of worldly benefits of it, right?
So, Gaurav, that's a very interesting question, and you are going to get a very unusual answer from me. As I said earlier, I am a person who goes with the flow. I don't struggle against the universe. The universe has already decided the course of things for me. And it keeps presenting those things before my eyes. It's up to me to take it up, go ahead. So I just go with the flow. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm very happy with the journey. I love it. So that's all I can say.
No, that's the best part. As you can enjoy the journey, then as you're saying, this something destined, and you're kind of enjoying it along the way. And so that's actually a very, very, very kind of simple, but not everyone is able to do that. Is what I can say. So that's great. And along with all of this, you've also written books, right? That's the other part of it. So Ms. Anita Karwal as an author, which again something that I didn't know a while back. But you've written many books. Your tryst with writing, I think, started with columns first, and you write not just serious stuff. You write fiction, humor. So that's again a lot of. I've seen bureaucrats write, but then they write really work-related stuff. But what you've written, governance,
Yes.
right? But what you've written is a very, very different kind of brings out a different side of you. I have some of the books that you've written here. I think you've written 3. I could find 2 of them. The first is the Think Everest, where you're talking about, I think, your husband, who was an IPS officer, Mr. Anita Karwal. He climbed the Everest. I think the only IPS officer to kind of...
The first bureaucrat.
First bureaucrat to kind of scale the Mount Everest. And you're talking about how it's a game in the mind and not just kind of physical. So it's a mind game. Second one, which I don't have, is where you kind of compare the journey of traveling or going up to the Everest, climbing the Everest, with the spiritual journey, and you're comparing different stages with what's happening in the Gita. So you talk about different shlokas there. Would love to kind of deep dive on that. And then you have this one, which is your journey to the Kailash Mansarovar, right? So these are 3 books you've written, and I also know you're planning to write more. So again, share with me, how did it start? How did writing happen to you, and how it...
So Gaurav, I've been writing for the longest time possible. As a child, I have written for a magazine called Children's World. My poems used to come in Hindustan Times.
Oh.
So I used to have an uncle, mere Phoopaji. He was an author. And he felt that I had the spark. So he would take me under his wing and spend one whole day writing. He'll say, chalo, hum dono likhte hain.
He used to write.
He used to write. I was a 9 or 10 year old. मैं भी साथ में बैठ के कुछ भी लिखती थी. Dear Phoopaji of mine, I write you this line. If you don't reply, I might just cry. This is a 9-year-old. And then he would say, kya likha hai, kya likha hai. Some stupidity was there, and he really encouraged me. And then my father also encouraged me, mother also encouraged me. So I used to do the school magazine, college magazine, a lot of stuff I used to do. When I got into service, I never really had the time to do much. But when this opportunity came to write a column, then I decided it will have to be a humor column.
Column in?
So the first time I started writing was for a Mirror, and then for DNA. And the Mirror one is a complete self-effacing column on the life of a lady bureaucrat.
Okay.
So I would write about my children, about this, about my daily chores, about what happened to my, to my dishwasher, anything, just making fun of myself. The one in DNA was about the latest science discoveries. I love science. So the latest science discoveries and presenting it with humor so that, people understand what it is all about. Uske baad
this was when?
So this I started in, I don't know, maybe 17, 18 years back. I can't recall.
You're kind of in Gujarat at that.
Yes. And then, of course, when Atul went to Everest and he came back, and he was a transformed individual. He felt as if he has come in touch with the powers that be, with the universe. So he felt highly, as if he has had a spiritual experience. So we kept discussing. Then I felt that this needs to be brought out. So he had kept a journal. So this Think Everest is, his journal is quoted, and I've weaved the whole
story around it.
The true story. Uske baad, my Bhagwad Gita thing happened. Then we realized he has this whole set of photographs. So
the Everest.
so first we decided to have a coffee table book. The publisher said, coffee table book to बहुत होती है, interesting कैसे बनाएंगे आप इसको? Then I said, okay, let me weave the Bhagwad Gita. So his is a physical journey, mine is a spiritual journey, how the two of them come together. We are both climbing something, some mountain.
It's called different peaks.
It's called same path, different peak. Yeah. So that's the one I wrote. Then when we went on this adventure to Kailash Mansarovar on cycles. So
both of you together?
Yes, we were 14 of us.
Okay.
Yeah. So then this came out. My next book, which is called The Power of Curiosity, is going to be launched in July first week. It's a HarperCollins publication. So that's a fiction. It's a fiction on a school. And it is a story which is narrated by a classroom.
By a classroom?
By a classroom.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very, very different kinds of books. Just if you could share a little bit about the second one that you're talking about, which is the different peaks.
Yes.
Different peaks. If you kind of,
I would love
journey, to. How do you relate the journey of climbing the Everest with the spiritual journey?
Yes, I would love to. And in fact, I can even quote some parts of it.
Yes, please do.
So, you know what I did in that is I have picked about 101 shlokas out of the 18 chapters of the Gita, which somehow appear to be parallel to the climb of the mountain. Okay, so I'll give you an example. When Arjun goes to the battlefield and he looks at his family members right in front of him, and he then gets this doubt whether I should fight them or I should not. The same thing happens when somebody is climbing the Everest. It's such a huge mountain. It is a force of nature. You go there, then you say, oh, did I take the right decision or not? तो उसके ऊपर जो श्लोक भगवद गीता में है, उसको I have translated it. Are you wondering if you want to climb or you won't? Are the pain and the risk really worth the ascent? Will the mountain's might bless you or she won't? Will you conquer her or be conquered in the end? So this is what Arjun felt at that time. Then in the Bhagwad Gita, we talk about the ephemeral nature of the material world, right? Yes. The same thing, like when Atul went there, he felt this spiritual enlightenment, feeling that the body is nothing, it is the soul, and my soul is in touch with the mountain. So to understand the ephemeral nature of the material world, Gita has certain shloks, particularly in chapter 2, and one of them I have translated. You must climb to all heights from within your core, where pleasure and pain feel the same in content. For to attain liberation and be bound no more, with your soul you climb, while the body you spend. So next what happens is, the Bhagavad Gita talks about the two contraries. One is the eternal soul, and the other is the perishable body. This is an understanding which the climber also gets. And Atul said that he realized that if he dies on Everest, he would be blessed. In fact, वो insurance के papers वगैरह सब छोड़ के गया था. So the shlok I have translated, the exhaustion, the injury, the wear and the tear belong to the realm of the body, my dear. Infinitely immeasurable, indestructible is the soul. You are climbing for it, and that is your goal. For who has ever conquered mountains, and who shall ever conquer them? Mountains are souls, my friend. They are unconquerable by men. So this is that one. And the last that I want to mention is about the oneness of the universe. Gita talks about non-duality, right? Everything is one. You, me, the plants, the building, the ants, the elephants, everything is one. That realization happens to most climbers. Can you believe it? Because Atul discussed this with the foreigner climbers as well, and they also said that we feel one with the mountain. Okay, so these are 3 shlokas that Yeah. It says, what you see with your eyes, I am the source. What you feel all the time, I am the force. You begin from me and shall return to me on the death of your being at the end of your course. In the earth after rains, the scent is me. In the fire you light, the foment is me. In the climb undertaken, the intent is me. In the life that you are living, the extent is me. Everything, it's non-duality. Everything is one. So this is just a glimpse of what I have written there.
And you've really basically taken the shloka and you've converted it into the context of climbing,
The
right?
climb.
So this elements of this way, you kind of pick the core essence from there, but the this thing is the climb.
Yeah.
Right? It is-
That was the idea, because otherwise Bhagavad Gita samajhna bhi mushkil hai. I am not even sure if I understand it. So I tried it in my own way. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. And I can kind of been reading these things, so I understand what you're trying to say here, and then to link it to that kind of real experience. And what I'm also hearing is that climbing experience itself was a spiritual experience for him.
Yes.
And I'm sure might be the case with a lot of other climbers as well.
Like I was telling you before we started, that it is meditation. You're so focused on the climb. Agar ek pair idhar gaya, you will be 2000 feet नीचे. एक आपका कैराबाइनर आपने ठीक से नहीं लगाया, रस्सी आपने ठीक से नहीं पकड़ी, आप नीचे गए. इतना फोकस होता है उसमें. It is pure meditation.
Yeah. Great. So how's been the personal life, right? You've been an IAS officer, your husband an IPS officer, and I'm sure there are kind of postings, transfers that keep happening, and how's the household different from the household that you grew in, right? Especially for your daughters, you have 2 daughters. How is it fundamentally different? Just help kind of articulate that, your own childhood versus the childhood for your daughters, from the perspective that the parents are civil servants and bureaucrats.
So my father was also a civil servant. He was from the Indian Revenue Service. But he did not get, he had stability of tenure, but all India. तो कभी कैलकाटा है, कभी ग्वालियर है, कभी दिल्ली, बॉम्बे, like that. But we did not get much disturbed. I think I have done 3 or 4 schools. I understood कि जब पैक कर लिया तो हम लोग को मूव करना है and all that.
But longer postings.
Longer postings. With Atul and me, क्या हुआ कि even though in the same state, my children went through 12 schools. So 12 school on an average, one per year.
Yeah.
Imagine हर जगह नई जगह जाना, नए टीचर्स, नए फ्रेंड्स, नया माहौल, एंड स्कूल में एडजस्ट करना बच्चों को कितना मुश्किल होता है. They have become very adaptable now, my kids, and very used to, getting transferred and all. In fact, after 5-6 schools, they started looking forward to a new school and new friends and new place. So yeah, it has been very tough on the personal side. And as a woman, I took a decision early in my career that my children will take priority. So the first 10 years of my career, I was very clear. And normally IAS officers within the 5th or 6th year, you become a district magistrate. I did not become a district magistrate till my 10th or 11th year in service, because I actually requested that I cannot do this posting. My children are very small. And
you took that conscious call that
I took a conscious call. And us waqt, I think I was also considered as a person who's a shirker, who doesn't want to work and doesn't want to take on a tough job. I didn't care about that because I thought my children were really important. And it was that phase. मैं foundation literacy numeracy की आज बात कर रही हूँ. If I don't take care of my children till the age of 9 or 10, how are they ever going to get that foundation? So I had decided that initial years of my life, I was known as the wife of that IPS officer. Atul was, of course, known. I was not known at all. But I took the call. And I'm very happy. I don't regret it.
It also kind of, from a work
It didn't
perspective,
matter.
also didn't matter
It
at all.
didn't matter at all. And I don't regret it at all. Yeah.
So how do you, just now talking about all of these things, how did you manage time? How do you generally manage time? Because you've done so many different things. The IAS career is a kind of demanding career, and you've contributed there in a very, very meaningful way, or everyone kind of appreciates that, knows that. You've written books, you've been on the spiritual this thing, you've taken care of family, you like traveling. So ये सब चीजें साथ में, what's the general mantra for managing time?
कई बार ऑफिस में बिल्कुल इंपॉर्टेंट मीटिंग के बीच में घर से फ़ोन आएगा, मैडम टमाटर ख़त्म हो गया, अब राजमा बनाना है कि नहीं बनाना है, एंड मैं बिल्कुल शांति से आलू बना दो, कोई बात नहीं, एंड द ऑफिसर्स विल बी लाफिंग कि स्निगरिंग एक्चुअली कि ये आलू की बात कर रही है, बट आई नेवर केयर्ड अबाउट ऑल दिस इज लाइफ एंड दिस इज रियलिटी, एंड या सो
And you are one. There might be different things, but you are the same.
Yes, I play different roles, but I am the same person. Yeah.
Great. At this stage, when you have kind of superannuated, you've kind of done a large part of your, it's been a fascinating life, a multifaceted life. What's your kind of, you're enjoying the journey, that's the mantra, right? So what's the journey right now, and what do you see yourselves doing in the coming kind of years?
So as soon as I retired, I started writing with a vengeance. I think that is something that I was feeling all the time. And
you're not able to do enough of it.
Yeah, even though, in office, matlab ek policy, mein you will see my contribution. I have written half of the policies. Whether it is PM Shri or NIPUN, Bharat or ND or everything, I've put my 2 bits in it. But that never satisfied me. So that's how this book is coming out. The second book is halfway through. The third book, conceptualization, has taken place. So I'm really into it. But yes, there are some ideas forming in my mind which I would not like to talk about right now. But let's see where the universe takes me. I have some
On the
ideas.
side, I was
on the education side, I want to continue to remain associated with education, and I'm just trying to firm up some ideas on that. Yeah.
Okay. So you're really passionate about education.
I think that is the future of every country, and particularly our country. If education, the foundation is laid well, everything else will just happen automatically. It will be a good society. It will be a inclusive, diverse, tolerant society. It would be a progressive, contributory society. Everything will happen. Education is the key, and school education even more. Yeah.
And if you talk about, on that note, we are at India at 75, India at 75 to India at 100, the Amrit Kaal. What are the elements in this that give you hope about the next 25 years for our country? And what are some of the potential risks that you see which we should actively kind of mitigate?
So what gives me hope is the fact that if you look at the statistics, dropouts have reduced. More girl children are enrolled. I mean, even girl children dropouts have reduced along the way. States are rising up to the occasion and trying to get into the sphere of education in a more serious manner. Technology has equalized a lot of things for children, for stakeholders. We as a country are doing very well. We have firmly established ourselves on the world map. The present government has ensured that happens. I was recently in the US and UK, and everybody is talking about India, about how India is doing so well, how there is transformation happening in India, and how such a huge country with such a huge population is able to manage to do things, whereas small countries, which are our neighbors, for example, are finding it difficult. So all this, I mean, one is seeing, I'm very hopeful. I see, I'm very positive, I'm very hopeful. Things are changing for the better. Yeah.
Any risks that you see that we should manage actively?
See, if we don't take women along with us, I feel that whatever we achieve is going to be incomplete and not sustainable. So I feel that is an area which really needs...
and this beginning to be focused on that.
It is. There is focus on it. Yeah. So that is one potential area. Secondly, I feel that we sometimes are a little slow with understanding the changes, the disruptions that are happening. If there is a chat GPT or if there is a technology, we need to understand where it needs regulation, where it needs freedom. those things,
We
sometimes
need to be ahead of the curve on those things.
we need to be ahead. And of course, climate change is something where we are now waking up to, and we are trying our best. But yet, that is a reality, and that is something which we need to be very, very careful about in our education system, in our governance, everywhere.
Thank you. This is an inspiring conversation. And I know that I have not seen interviews of you, a podcast of you. So I know that you're a private person. You're not out there. So thank you. Well, thanks a lot for agreeing to do this. And thanks for all the inspiration and the journey that you have. And I'm sure it'll kind of inspire many, many young people out there to also kind of contribute to nation building, to give their kind of, as we like to call, राष्ट्र निर्माण के यज्ञ में हमारी भी एक आहुति होनी चाहिए. So I think that's the spirit which hopefully people will take from us. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.